you know what legacy means?
It's what you pass down to your children and your children's children. It's what remains of you when you're gone.
What is up, everybody? We just finished watching the penultimate episode of Season 2 of House of the Dragon, and this is House of the Empire. It's a spoiler-filled roundtable review talking about that episode. Oh my gosh, it is jam-packed with some very classic Game of Thrones things, and then some other elements that, honestly, kind of reminded me of Jurassic Park. We're going to get into all of that and a good bit more on this live, spoiler-filled, action-packed, fresh thoughts discussion. And obviously, I'm not going to be talking to myself. I'm joined by Sean and Jade, both on the air to help me break all of this down. Sean, I'm going to throw it to you first for initial thoughts on this episode. We have covered a lot of Game of Thrones in our day, and the penultimates usually have some of the best action sequences and or character developments. And while we may not have gotten a big fight scene per se, we did have a pretty big scene in this episode and a lot of drive that is setting us up for what I think should be a pretty epic finale.
Yeah, I mean, this episode was once again filled with a ton of character moments, character building moments. Some characters that we know well, some characters that we don't know as well, and some returning characters. I thought that for the most part, the episode delivered. I do have some nitpicky things about this one, though. The Jurassic Park reference is great, though, because that was definitely felt in full.
There's certain growls that take place that I'm just like, that sounds just like Rexy, but I'm not going to get too far ahead of myself. The inner Jurassic Park nerd in me is about to come out. So, Jade, please step in before that happens. How did you feel about this episode and what all it entails?
I don't think I'm the best person to not talk Jurassic Park. I mean, you do know that I have dinosaur tattoo, right? I totally agree. It did feel like Jurassic Park at times. The way that certain things happened. I really liked this episode. I feel like it set everything up. It wasn't a filler episode. It was entertaining from start to finish. I really just want to get started and talk about the opening scene, though.
Yeah, because that was the thing that was like being shown in the preview at the end of last week's episode, and honestly, I felt like maybe he was going to make a few demands, and maybe he was going to, say that he wants this, that, and the other thing, and by her asking, "What do you want?" and then they cut away from it, you're like, "Oh man, what is this laundry list he's about to drop on us?" And instead of dropping a laundry list, he just drops to his knees and says that he wants to serve his queen. And I thought that was really touching, maybe a little surprising. But Adam definitely recognizes that a dragon is a game changer and a life changer, and he doesn't need much more than that because everything else is probably going to follow. But to see him accept this role so gladly sets things up for a lot of cascading domino effects that happen throughout the course of this episode. The prospect of recruiting bastards and the conversations that take place surrounding that, and even some of the people who leave as a result of it. This is a pretty big scene, Sean, for a lot of reasons. How did you feel that it was executed?
In terms of what we actually get to see, I thought it was done very well. I think I know Jade's favorite part of the scene, so I'm going to leave that for her to talk about. But I thought it was telling. Part of me is looking at that scene going, does she see any of Laenor in him, and would she have brought it up? I feel like there's a lot of foreshadowing in this episode. And I don't know if it happens in this scene particularly, pardon me, but I thought it was very well done. And I'll leave Jade and I have kind of the favorite part in this same scene here, so I'll let her talk about it.
Okay, I'm just going to talk about this entire scene from start to finish, guys. I know that we're going to keep it short tonight, but this is one that I'm not going to. So from the very first part last week, where we saw the dragons facing off and Rhaenyra and Adam standing there, I'm just like, oof. It just moved me because I'm just like, from my perspective, I'm just like, it looks like Sea Smoke was just like, do you know what? I'm yours. We have this connection already, but I know that you need a dragon rider. I found one for you. We are loyal 100%. Look, I brought him to you. And even when it showed them like this, it looked like a Sea Smoke was bowing to her and like showing it. Zach, help me out. My brain is failing me. What is her dragon's name?
Cyrax, I believe.
Yes, that's it. I asked Sean earlier, and and I couldn't remember even from there. So it looked like it was even showing Cyrax respect, and then she took like a couple steps towards Adam. Cyrax followed, and Sea Smoke moved forward. Like, I'm loyal to you, but I'm more loyal to him. And I think that that's going, again, I don't know spoilers very much for the future, but I think that's going to be a very important part going forward to show that like dragons are loyal to Rhaenyra, but they're more loyal to their riders.
Well, I think you're onto something, because at least one of the two new dragon riders has more of their story to tell than what was just seen in this episode. I'll put it that way. But I do think it's interesting that someone who has already claimed a dragon, like Rhaenyra, has the ability to summon another dragon. We see that towards the back end of this episode when she summons Vermithor with just 3 words, and he just comes out of the cave and out of the shadows. Like, the priests didn't have to sing a song or anything. She just gave the command, and there he was. And so to have that loyalty to the queen or to the blood of the dragon, I think it is instilled in them to a certain extent, but I think you're definitely onto something, that there's more to it than that. What's really interesting about this episode, I take bullet point notes as I go through the episode in order to remind myself and prepare myself for this episode. Yes, I do have a good memory, but this helps for when it's late or when I'm tired or my memory gets a little shittier and I need a little boost just to remember. As I was going through it, I realized that this is a very Team Black centric episode. Like, it's about 2/3 black, 1/3 green as far as scene split is concerned. By my count, there's really only about 5 or 6 green specific scenes. Whereas when we're talking about Team Black or recruiting people who become Team Black, when we're going through some of the villages recruiting potential dragon riders, I included those scenes as Team Black because that's who they're headed towards. There's about 11 or 12 of those, not including Daemon, because Daemon, I'm still not sure who he actually is with or who he is for. He has 2 scenes, one that I'm sure Sean is very excited to talk about in a little bit here. But I think it's very fascinating and very telling that we've gone to the second half of the season and we're talking about more black than green.
So I want to chime in here for a second and say I don't agree with Jade in terms of how that opening scene played out. I think, oh my God, what's Laenor's dragon's name again? Or Laenor's old dragon?
Sea Smoke.
Sea Smoke. So I feel like Sea Smoke is kind of like telling her to back off.
Yeah, and that's what I was getting at, is that like she still told she was sea smoke was still showing respect to her, but then as soon as it felt that Adam was even like a little bit threatened, it's just like back off. Like I know you're still the queen, but like I'm more loyal to him now.
I think for me it was more like territorial, possession wise. You had Cyrax who was not going to let Rhaenyra go closer to that without following her, which I loved. But I think you had Sea Smoke also being there, like you make one wrong move and I'm gonna, burn you up. Um, I know Zach has some things going on his end right now, but I I just want to bring up something I didn't like. I didn't like that the episode starts and they're already together, considering where the episode ended last episode. I thought the shot was great. I loved the side view, the two dragon riders and their dragons, and I think cinematography wise, it was fantastic. But I felt like her flying to him and spotting him would have been um, nice. I feel like there's some missed opportunity there. I feel like that happens again a couple more times in this episode. Um, and, as much as I like what we see in this episode, there's some things that aren't shown that felt a little Game of Thrones ish season 8.
Well, I have nothing more to add to that one.
I just felt like there was a lot of skipping around here while we wait for Zach, but like I felt like there was a lot of time skips in this episode and convenient placement of things, and like Eamon takes off at the end of the episode on a horse and just um automatic, well, I guess it's Vagar he gets to, not another dragon. So when I first seen the dragon, I thought he just automatically guessed where the dragon was going to come down. But there's a couple of moments in this episode where it's like we skip 3 or 4 days, and it's like, oh, okay. Oh,
If it was even longer than that, like when you, I don't want to get too far ahead of everything here, but even when you show Aegon later, like you have to really think about how much time has actually passed if he's able to get out of bed and if the burns are already healed that much.
I can't remember if that happens before. Actually, no, I just showed it on TV here. So, it, that happens before they send off for the all the, I'd say potential dragon riders, but I think cannon fodder is another word for it. We may or may not get Zach back in this episode, so we will stand by for that. Definitely thinking about him. So you and I will carry on. But we're going to do things a little bit out of order because neither one of us can view the notes right now. So, yeah, I think my only con for this episode was a lot of the things that people complain about with Game of Thrones season 8, I thought were very prominent in this episode.
What do you mean by that?
Just the time skips, like skip a few days here, skip a few days there. Don't show Rhaenyra finding Adam. Just a lot of convenience in this episode.
I don't necessarily. I do kind of disagree with you. I don't feel like she had to find Adam. Like you knew she was going to find him anyway. He's on Dragonstone. It's not like the Sea Smoke's going to go anywhere else. Dragonstone, it's its home. So I don't really feel like you would have had to find him. I feel like he would have found you eventually anyway. But as to far as like the other time jumps, I get that because I was even sitting there like, wait, how much time was this? If like I just said about the burns, then they said before that it takes something like 2 weeks to sail to King's Landing, doesn't it? So if that's the case, then that means that was at least
A
2
few days.
days. So that means that it was at least a few days to get the letter to King's Landing, a few days to get the ships ready. This episode's already looking at least a week or two in between them, if not more.
I don't know about a week or two in between them, but it feels like about a week passes during the episode itself. They're actually showing that scene right now as it's playing on the TV. So that it didn't take me out of the episode per se, but I just didn't reason. I thought that we'd be following along, scene by scene, sort of. Not that I can bitch about lost time because all these episodes, for the most part, have been over an hour long. But we did cut out 2 episodes this season compared to the prior season, and I just wonder if some of that time could have been better off served. How did you feel about what went down with Damon at Harrenhal? Now, not the part with the special guest star of the episode, but rather the with the Riverlands people. Like, how did you feel about how that played out? Welcome back, Zach. Glad you're in one piece, man. You had me worried there for a sec.
Yeah, I worried myself for a second, but we figured out what it was. I thought it was a fire alarm. Turned out it was something else, and we figured it out and got it fixed. So
Was it a
sorry.
damn O2 sensor? We know all about those.
It was actually an H2O sensor that we didn't know was there. And like a few drops of water got on this thing and it started beeping, suggesting that there was a leak in the laundry room. So
that's smart to have.
It is. It's really smart to have. We didn't even know we had it until a couple, like literally 2 or 3 drops of water got on it and it started blaring the hell out of our laundry area. So
I want to backtrack for a second now that Zach's back. Jade disagrees with this point. I want to see your take on it.
Oh, am I the tiebreaker? Lovely.
Yeah. So I felt I wanted to get my cons out of the way because it's really the only one I have this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Is I thought that this episode felt a little bit like Game of Thrones season 8 with some convenience and some fast forwarding of time on a couple occasions, and it felt like it moved a little quick for my liking. But other than that, I can't think of any. And the points I make is the beginning of the episode that you brought up. Rhaenyra just automatically finds Adam just like that. We don't see her finding him. Maybe he was in the sky and easy to spot. We don't see him in the sky at the end of the last episode. But then there's when Mysaria sends off the letter, if you will, for I called it cannon fodder, or rather the potential dragon riders.
Mm-hmm.
That's at least a week there. A few days to get to King's Landing, few days to get back from King's Landing.
At least a day or two to spread the word.
It takes 3 days to go from Dragonstone to King's Landing by sail. So it's just in that one scene, 6 days passed.
So
I'm just saying, for me, it felt a little out of place compared to the rest of the season. It felt, for the same thing people whine, moan, and bitch about Game of Thrones season 8, just kind of did it in this episode.
I didn't feel it. So if that is telling in any shape or form, I did not feel like things were moving too fast. I felt like it was natural. This is what we need. The rest of the story cannot continue until we have these pieces. So why are we going to sit around and do nothing for 6 days while we're waiting for these people to come in? It just, to me, it felt like Rhaenyra's made her decision. No matter how many times people try to talk to her about it, she's made up her mind. This is what she's going to do. She's made up her mind. This is who she wants. And she had those conversations with Jason, Massaria, and people like that, weighing the pros and the cons. She's already done all of that. She can't keep mulling it over after she's put the word out. So the only thing that, like, story-wise, that's going to drive anything forward is once they get there. So unless we want to sit around and watch nothing happen for a week, I think that kind of lapse was needed, because that's the next part of the story to tell.
Hugh's daughter dying off screen too kind of pissed me off a bit. We made a point of showing, hey, they showed her a few times. They made a point of making her front and center, him knocking the person out for the food, and then all of a sudden she's dead off screen. Like,
She had 0 lines.
Yeah,
but it's a him moment.
She had 0 lines. She was not important to this story. She was important to his story. She was she's not important to House of the Dragon. She is only important to Hugh, and Hugh is barely even important to House of the Dragon.
Oh, we're disagreeing with this. Hugh's not important to House of the Dragon. Zach, you and I both know spoilers, sir.
He is not
no spoilers
of that kind of consequence.
Dragon Rider now. That's what I'm saying. That's the spoiler that I was talking about.
He had a 1 in 55 or whatever chance of dying and somehow made it out.
Either way, he ended up being there, and he is now a Dragon Rider. His child died because of Team Green. It's an important part. It might not seem relevant in this aspect, but in the long run, I believe that this will be an important factor. And to not even touch on it, we couldn't keep my kid alive. That's a one fucking sentence. And your kid died? What? No.
I said to Jade when they revealed it that way, I'm like, oh, well, that changes the way I view his character. Because before, I feel like, this is a noble dude who is going to do whatever he has to do for his daughter. Well, his daughter's now dead. The loss of a child changes a person, even back in Thrones era.
And his wife was basically just like, if you go, I'm not going to be here.
Yeah. Again, she was only important to Hugh's story. She's not important to the TV show. She's not important to us as a viewer. The only thing that we need to follow is his repercussions. We don't need to follow her storyline or the wife's storyline anymore, because they're out of the picture. Him making this decision to go and even try to be a Dragon Rider costs him, quote unquote, everything. If he goes when his daughter is still alive, he comes off as a selfish asshole. So, like, she needs to be gone anyways. Otherwise, he's just leaving a sick daughter behind so that he can go ride a big skinny lizard.
We both are agreeing that she has to be dead. We're not disagreeing with that. But what we're saying is that for his storyline, it is important. And if he's going to be an important figure in this show, then it should be shown.
No,
It's funny what just happened there. We just went from Zach agreeing with you that it doesn't feel like Game of Thrones season 8 to Zach against both of us on
I'm talking to a couple of parents here. I think if one of your kids passed away off screen, you would be pissed too. Like, I'm not trying to make this like parents versus like non-parents type of thing, but I really think there's probably just a tiny bit of subjectivity going on, just a tiny bit.
Oh, for sure. It's how you relate to it.
I don't give a rat's ass about whether the kid died on screen or off. I don't. To me, it has no consequence to the plot of House of the Dragon. It has plenty of consequence to the plot of Hugh Hammer. Hugh Hammer is not the star of this show.
See, I don't know how big he becomes, right? He's a Dragon Rider. I don't know where it's going, right? I just said to Jade that, like, oh, his daughter's dead. Means he's gone through trauma and loss, and this might be a guy that's...
While we're on this with that little speech that he was on, can you settle another debate for us? Was his mother Viserys? What the hell? Daemon and Viserys' sister, or what is it? Him that's his brother?
No, I feel like it was his sister.
I think that it was the mother that was related to that.
The mother was related because he mentioned something. One of the quotes in the show notes that I put was "brothers, boys." Viserys and Daemon. So
that's what I thought.
She was related to Viserys and Daemon's dad. My
Who was that
brother,
again? Do we
my
know the dad
my
by name?
my brother's dad. So Viserys Targaryen,
Wrong on that.
father name, Balon. So
We just listened to a thing.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I should have
Balon
known better.
Targaryen's sister was Alyssa.
No, that's also that's Damon's mom.
Yeah, it was the same,
So
remember?
it would have been a different sister that is.
Balon Targaryen
It would be
sisters. Right now, it's only giving me Alyssa.
Yeah, I
So
think that's right.
who were the siblings of Balon Targaryen? So there was Aegon. No, that's the wrong Balon. That's Aemon,
We
son
need
of
a family
Jaehaerys
tree
first.
episode at one point.
Right, for real. Let me try that. Targaryen family tree, because this is a hot mess. Too many cooks. Too many cooks. Yes, I am going to accept cookies. Whatever. So Jaehaerys had Alyssa, Balon, and Aemon. So there wasn't a sister.
legitimate children.
Aside from Alyssa, Jaehaerys' kids were both boys.
Yeah, I believe Balin gets with Alyssa, and Alyssa dies before Balon, I believe. I think we just heard this week, like by 7 years or
Alyssa
something.
dies before Balon, and she dies after giving birth to one of Damon's younger siblings.
So I'm going to throw down a little bit of a hot take here. I know we were trying to zoom through this episode, but things happen.
Yeah.
So I feel like Hugh's daughter dying on screen was important to see how Hugh responded to that, to understand how angry he is. Because at times in this episode, I just felt like he was determined and not necessarily bitter and angry and pissed off that his daughter died. And maybe he does feel those things, but it didn't come across that way.
He yells at the dragon, "I'm ready, take me," as in like
after he runs for 5 fucking minutes.
Yeah, but I'm saying like if they would have shown the daughter dying and his grief over her dying instead of just a little sentence to his wife like, "Oh, she died," then like it would have been like a more powerful moment, in my opinion.
My point is this is my hot take point. That would have been more important to show than showing Rhaenyra and Mysaria getting it on at the end of the last episode. And here's why. Not only did they cut that out of the when they're doing the this is what happened on last episode, they literally avoid it altogether. There's no mention of it at all in this episode. There's no tension of it at all in this episode. And we learned to find out it wasn't even in the script. It was an Emma Darcy call on set to try to add more that clearly they went the other way on. So as much as I love the show, I think there's some miscalculation of screen time going on a little bit in the last couple episodes. Just my take. I'll get hated on for it, but whatever.
I don't know if I have an opinion. I don't know if I have a retort for that, because I've seen plenty of behind the scenes featurettes about this show, and I've listened to plenty of podcasts about how you create TV shows and how you have dozens of pages of script that end up on the cutting room floor, tons of material that don't make it into the final cut. And that's just the nature of the business. That's just how it goes. Ultimately,
did you find it weird though that they removed it altogether from the they do the biggest events of the prior episode right before the intro plays, and they very intentionally cut around that.
No, I think people are making a bigger deal out of that kiss than they need to, if I'm being honest.
That I agree with.
She's a person who is lost and angry and was able to seek refuge in the arms of someone who has also been lost and angry at the same person that she's angry at. And they're both grown-ass adults that know how to behave in front of others, and they went back to the hierarchy that was supposed to exist rather than lingering on one moment of weakness. When they got interrupted, they came to their senses. It was like post-nut clarity, and they decided to move on. So I I don't see why it's still being talked about. I think there is so many other good things about this show for people to be like still harping on this. And I'm not saying you specifically, Sean, but just the internet in general. Like
There's
this
a lot
isn't
of people out there that'll
the
weaponize anything.
this isn't something that needs to continue to be discussed and dissected. I think we need to focus on Rhaenyra's quest for power and the fact that she has 2 more dragons added to her arsenal now, not who she's putting her lips on.
Yeah, I agree with that. But we both know they're going to weaponize. That's just how people are.
They always do. Everybody's gonna find something to bitch about. Everybody's bitching about, Robert Downey Jr. right now, and I also don't give a rat's ass. Like,
I'm pro for that move, even though it has nothing to do with Westeros.
but
I actually disagree. Surprise, surprise. I think that it, like, not that it's super important that they kissed, whatever, kiss whoever the fuck you want. But like, Lucerys makes a point of being like, was it her idea? Like, obviously, he's just like, I don't need you to be fucking around. I need you to be the queen, and I need you to keep your fucking wits end here. Like, don't have her cloud your judgment. Like, that's just the vibe I was getting from him with the attitude he was giving her.
I think the vibe that I was getting was that she's the only lowborn that has some pull in her ear right now. Everybody else that she's taking advice from is a person of highborn quality. And so when he's saying her, and then he turns right around and talks about how the people that she's trying to recruit are mongrels and bastards, I think he's upset that a lowborn person has enough influence on her to say you should recruit more lowborns and flood your castle with people who don't deserve to be here, which is a truly ironic thing for a bastard to be saying. I think that's the biggest irony is he knows who he is. He straight up acknowledges it in this episode, and yet he also does not want them around. That's one of the biggest character conflicts in the whole episode.
I took it more as, and like, again, this is just my opinion, whatever. It doesn't mean much to anybody, but it's my opinion. I took it more as in like him saying to her, like, you just spent the last 20 years saying how freaking dare you accuse me of having bastard children, and go fuck yourselves. And like, that's the whole reason why you weren't allowed on the crown to be like, why Alicent was saying like, you're not fit to be queen, and then to turn around and be like, yeah, whatever, let's just have all the bastards come. Like, I think that he was more saying like, you sound like a hypocrite, and if you do that, then you're going to lose respect from people. That's my opinion and how I took it.
I see it both ways. I think you both got, not that I'm trying to play peacekeeper or anything, by all means, have at it. But I see both.
I don't disagree with that point. I don't disagree with that point. I just think there's a little bit more to it than just that, though.
I also see, I don't want to even call him a kid because clearly he's bright. But I also see a guy that thinks that Masari is getting too much power too quickly.
Right.
And I think he's right.
Right. No, and you've been suspicious of her for a couple of episodes now. I know that. But the vibe that I got from that whole conversation was that he already acknowledges that he's a bastard. He's like, did you think I would have dark hair? Did you think that when you put Strong into your bed that I would come out looking like this? Like, he knows exactly who he is. And he knows that even though she claims him as heir, like, he's looking at family history and seeing that her claim is contended. So what's to stop the realm from contending his claim when she dies? And her letting more bastards into her army and also becoming dragon riders. The way I took it was the one thing that separates him from any other Targaryen bastard like Hugh or Ulf or any of the others that showed up, the one thing that separated from them was that he was treated as highborn and he was a dragon rider. As soon as you let other bastards become treated like highborn and become more like dragon riders or even become a dragon rider, his claim is now even to theirs because he has nothing that separates him anymore. Not his name, not his abilities, not his hair color. He has nothing that separates him from other bastard lineages. And if anybody wants to try to make a claim for the throne, there's a very decent chance that the realm might follow somebody big and burly and smart and honorable like Hugh rather than follow somebody like Jacaerys. I think he's threatened by these bastard dragon riders because as soon as they start feeling highborn, they're going to try to take his claim away from him. That was the impression I got from that scene.
Yeah, I really, I kind of feel for him. I've really grown to like Jacaerys, and I did find it funny that the bastard is the one saying it, but at the same time,
Right.
I understood where he was coming from. Like, he sees what his mom's going through right now, and it'll even be maybe not worse for him because he's not a woman, and that's just the way that they look at women in Westeros at that time. But you're spot on in terms of the bastard, and I mean, even Viserys and Daemon's brother there, Hugh, like, technically speaking, you know, his claim might even be better than Rhaenyra's. If
A
it
half
wasn't for Viserys saying it.
a half brother of Viserys might be better than a half son of Rhaenyra. So like his
You can't fake who your brother is, but you can fake who your father is.
Well, and he just looks the part too. Like he looks like a Targaryen. He looks like a Targaryen warrior, and this I feel like the small folk would respect him. So, like, yeah, I can see how a teenager that's been brought up in a castle could feel threatened by somebody who looks the part more than he does. And if that person becomes a rival in the air, then yes, there's a lot of that could potentially unfold. I'm not saying it will, but there's definitely potential for more treatment that way because Jace is fluent in High Valyrian. And in the end of the episode, we saw them already on Dragonback. Ulf is already riding Silverwing through King's Landing, probably not of his own volition or of his own power, but obviously he doesn't have enough fluency in Valyrian to be able to stop Silverwing from doing that. Not yet, anyways. So there's a very high potential that even though they are like rushing their schooling and getting them ready for battle, these people don't know how to carry themselves as highborn. They don't know how to speak High Valyrian. And Jace could very well look down on them for that and refuse to help them. He's like, my mother has recruited you, but I didn't recruit you. That doesn't mean I have to treat you the way she does. And if you can't keep up, then tough shit. Like I feel like he's got potential to be an asshole to them.
What I also find so funny about that is that it was literally his idea to go and look for extended family.
Yes, but I don't think he wanted half siblings. I think he wanted like what Darkland was supposed to be, where like there is a man of honor and prestige and knighthood that has that potential. I don't think he was ever thinking about bastards.
Where do you want to go from here?
To bed. I think we probably need to talk a little bit about Alan and Adam and Corlys, because with Rhaenys gone, they're going to be the ones that kind of carry what's going on with House Velaryon at this point. Corlys has next to no conversation with Adam at Dragonstone. He gets in real close and is about to talk to him, and then he just says something like "good job" and leaves. Like super awkward, super awkward. But then when he tries to have a conversation with Alan is like, I don't want to be a dragon rider. Like I don't care if the call is put out. I am salt and sea, and that's all I'm ever gonna be. That's all I ever want to be. So like, say again.
So basically the complete opposite of what Baela said.
Right. And it's kind of setting it up where even if Adam goes and becomes a dragon rider, which obviously he's going to, who could Corlys name as his heir, because there's already precedent in Game of Thrones for bastards to be legalized. Ramsay Bolton is a prime example of that, 120 something years later. It's possible that if you have like not a decent heir nearby, you could naturalize one of your bastards and name him heir. And I really think that's the direction Corlys is headed right now. But that's just me. But they played a big part. They all played a pretty big part. Corlys trying to be the steady hand of the queen at the council meeting, Alan being one of the messengers and couriers, and then Adam, vowing his loyalty. It's cool to see that even with Rhaenys gone, there is still some Valyrian power taking place in this kingdom.
I did think that it was important that they touched on saying like Valyrians don't have the dragon riding abilities, so it must have been their mother that was a Targaryen bastard of some sort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that kind of helps narrow down the field of what justifies it. We talked about that on last week's episode. It could be that blood doesn't matter at all. It could be that it's Targaryen focused. It could be old Valyria centric. And by him saying that Valyrians are not dragon riders, then he may have ended up sleeping with a distant cousin or something. We've got a real Lion King situation going on with the Valyrians and the Targaryens. But I think at the end of the day, it's more important about where these characters go than where they come from. Like, regardless of how he came to be a dragon rider, the fact is he is a dragon rider. And if Rhaena ends up encountering Sheep Stealer, then you're going to have Syrax, you're going to have Sea Smoke, you're going to have Vermithor, you're going to have Silverwing, you're going to have possibly Sheep Stealer, and you're going to have Caraxes. That is a 6 dragon contingent on Team Black. And basically in the span of one episode, they have flipped the tables enough to force Vhagar to retreat, which I thought was really, really important, really, really powerful.
I can't wait to talk about that. But sorry, Zach, I can't wait to talk about that. But I think that we need to go into like more detail regarding that, and first touch on the fact of the what's it called, the dragon tamers, how they walked away and were just like, no, we're not helping you. It's an abomination. Meanwhile, it's just like Sea Smoke literally chose Adam. It's not like Adam went looking for them.
Right. And I think they might have been willing to forgive that one instance because it's like a rare, unique circumstance. But the fact that she is now actively recruiting more of the same, I think that's where they might have drawn the line. They were like, okay, we can put up with it just this once. But the fact that you have now ferried in like 50, 100 of these people that do not have the name that they are supposed to have, this is an abuse of power. This is an abuse of station. This is an abuse of the dragons themselves and the magic of old Valyria that they carry. Like, I had never seen them really take a stand politically. It was always just, we're here for the dragons. I don't care like who wants the throne. We're just here to take care of the dragons. And now it's almost like a statement saying, you know what? This is where we draw the line. We're gone.
But that's like so weird to me. And I know that it's just like the timepiece that they're, and like the area that they're doing it in. But like that's so weird to me because you're literally saying like bastards can be legitimized if they don't have a legitimate heir. However, and like they have the same bloodline in that case. But now that it's time to ride a dragon, bloodlines don't matter. Like, but if you're a bastard, that's the way that's coming across me, and it just doesn't make sense.
So before we get into this, I feel like we need to go back to the Daemon Viserys scene because I think it plays into this. In my opinion, it does anyway. Really cool to see Patty back and like that. I'm sure he just loved having to sit in a makeup chair and get all his prosthetics done again. I like the way this scene came across. Very rarely in a Game of Thrones based show do you do something that doesn't have payoff. And I thought this had a lot of payoff. And I think the payoff already started to happen in this episode. And Viserys says to Daemon, whoever wears the crown, it crushes them, basically. And in my opinion, um, you see some of that with Rhaenyra already in this episode, and almost like a foreshadowing of what's going on with her. And, it's kind of a warning to Daemon at the same time.
I can see that, but I think the real reason they put Patty in all that makeup was because literally the very next scene was one with Aegon, who looks almost identical to the way his dad did. So
For sure.
I don't think it's just Rhaenyra that the crown is weighing heavy on. I think it's
Both
whoever
of
is
them.
trying to sit on the throne. Yeah, like
Yeah.
hers is kind of a metaphorical weight. Damon's is like a spiritual weight because of what's happening to him at Harrenhal. But then there's a physical toll that happens to Aegon as well, and he straight up looks like Harvey Dent from The Dark Knight. I'm telling you, like the burnt ear and the scar tissue. Like if there is stuff that's at play with Rhaenyra, it's probably a bit more subtle than what's at play with Aegon. But to do that back to back contrast of this is the way that the king looked and this is the way that one of the kings today looks, I think that was a very good piece of the storytelling to not put like a buffer sequence in between that or do some other scene and then jump to Aegon. Going straight from seeing how Patty looked to seeing how Aegon currently looks was a really solid piece of storytelling in my mind.
Yeah, I liked it. I didn't get a chance to say it, but I do think it affects leaving Damon out of it a bit. It affects the two kids a ton, Aegon and Rhaenyra, and um, kind of felt like sorry if I'm skipping ahead a bit here. I know we don't have as much time tonight, but um, you guys brought up the dragon trainers walking out there.
Mm-hmm.
I think they were right to walk out, and the way that scene comes off when Vermithor goes all T-Rex from Jurassic Park on them, um, that was kind of fucked up. They were literally stopping people from leaving.
That's
Before
what it sounds like.
before that, I was like, you know what? You chose to be there, fine. But when they want to leave at that point in time and you're not letting them,
Right.
guess what? You got a little bit of Darth Vader going on.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me was the beginning of the changing of sails when it comes to Rhaenyra. And I didn't know that we were going to even explore a bit of that because she's always felt like the one holding it together. And
Mm-hmm.
then you rewind it to the Patty scene or the Viserys scene. It's like, oh yeah, no, the weight of the crown is starting to crush her a little bit too. And yeah, that one took me back a bit because I didn't think we would see them being held against their will in there. That in
Right.
Game of Thrones style, that one rocked me a little bit, maybe more than it should have.
Right.
Like it was just a stupid move altogether because like you said, like if they wanted to leave, just let them leave. Obviously they're not meant to be dragon riders at that time. If
Mm-hmm.
for whatever reason one of them survives and makes it back to King's Landing, they're going to be like, Rhaenyra's lost it. Like she just has sacrificed all these people. And for like a third, why wouldn't you let them live and let them fight for you in a different way or serve you in a different way? Obviously they all came to you wanting to help. Like she wasn't using her noggin there.
Yeah, that was one thing that I put in my show notes as I was watching her go through her great hall and give this super inspirational type speech about, change that's coming for kin and the realm by trying to claim these two dragons. Like her focus is definitely more on the dragons than the people riding them. Like her focus is to turn the tide of the war and bring about change and peace and all that sort of stuff. But you're right, she doesn't seem to have as much care for at what expense or at what cost. And it's very possible. It's very, very possible because think about the previous episode when she approached Sir Darklyn about it. She did it publicly. She did it with honor. She said, you don't have to do this if you don't want to. I would never tell you to do this. I would only ask it of you. And then he gets down on one knee and volunteers for it. She does not give the lowborn an out. She gave Darklyn an out. But this whole crowd of people that she gave this big inspirational speech to, she did not once say, "You may leave if this is not for you." She did not give them an option to turn and run when they got scared by the dragon.
They
She,
chose to sail 3 days. They chose to get out of the boat, walk their asses up to the castle, sit and listen to her speech, and then walk into the dragon pit. They didn't have to walk into the dragon pit. They could have been like, not for me. So
Wait, are you defending it now?
I'm not saying that they didn't have an out. I agree that they should have left. Like they could have, that they should have been able to leave. But you can't say that they didn't have a fucking out. They chose to be there.
they chose to come over. I don't think they chose to walk into their deaths.
Agreed.
I don't think that they chose to voluntarily die. I think a lot of them knew the risk. I think a lot of the people that turned tail and run at the first sign of a dragon probably didn't know what they were getting themselves into. And again, Darklyn was given an option. They were not. She gave a big, hefty speech to Darklyn in the last episode, and she gave a big, hefty speech in this one. But the glaring difference to me was that she gave Darklyn an opportunity to say no, and she did not do the same for the lowborn.
She didn't even offer to feed them. It was all right. We're getting right to it.
They're just like they're here, Your Grace. Okay, let me talk to them, and we'll go right off to the dragon pit. Like no accommodations, no food. You're right. Nothing like that.
Time passed. We don't know if they were given a meal beforehand. We don't know if they were told by the dragon trainers, "Listen, you might fucking die. That's why we're walking out." We don't know any of that because there's no timeline on it.
No, I disagree. They imply that they just arrive. When she's talking to Missaria, she gets right to it. She gets into it with the dragon trainers. The dragon trainers take off, and it's let's get right to it. And the camera even makes a point of showing some of the glances between them. Yes, you're right. They do follow, but I'm pretty sure, and again, I don't know for certain, but I'm pretty sure when they're following her and, her guards or whatever.
At this point, he's just with one more thing. I'm done.
For me, it's like, I kind of thought it was going to go this way. Obviously, it's not a 2-hour episode, so you don't have time to do it this way. But just in story, forgetting about runtime, I think they're all probably thinking one at a time. We're going to get to go up and try to claim the dragon, not the dragon's going to bust out of the gate like the Tyrannosaurus from fucking Jurassic Park and start eating people and blowing them to smithereens. And that's where I think it becomes different. I don't think any of them signed up for that.
Speed dating for dragon riders. That's basically what it is.
You got to meme that shit, dude.
Yeah, the dragon scanned over the crowd, and if you notice, he kind of stops at Ulf a little bit, and then goes to Hugh, and then goes back to the random one with the scar on his face that volunteered first, and then he attacks them. But he kind of does a little swoop over it and pauses a little bit at both, and then backs off and is just not you.
Okay, I'm wearing a Parks and Rec shirt, so I've got to make a Parks and Rec reference. We just saw this episode, my wife and I, the other day. There's an episode where Mona Lisa is working for Tom at the used clothing rental store, Rent-A-Swag, and she sees all the dudes. She sees Chris and Ben and Ron and Jerry, and she's looking at all of them, going, "For the record, would hit, hard pass." I feel like that's kind of the way Vermithor was looking at them, going would eat. I'm cooling on you a little bit. That was the vibe I got. But you're right. We've mentioned it a couple of times, and I think this is one scene we can all agree on as far as the thematic element is concerned. The sequence where Vermithor unleashes hell on the lowborn is like having a T-Rex that breathes fire. The growls, the snarls, the camera angles, the the biting of the people is very much like what the Indominus Rex did in the 2015 Jurassic World movie. There's just so many similarities that it's not just about being bird-like or bat-like. Honestly, Caraxes reminds me more of a bat than anything. But to see a dragon with a completely different dinosaur-like personality really resonated with me. And even though it brought about a lot of fire and screaming and death, that may have been my favorite scene in the whole episode. It felt like I was watching a T-Rex sequence, but in a different universe.
I was waiting for it to knock over like a rock and have Hugh like cut something and be covered in oil like Chris Pratt. The Dominus Rex.
Or have one of the lowborn kind of like squatting over a hole like the guy from the first movie sitting on the toilet. It could be any one of those things. But
Also kind of reminded me about the T-Rex coming through the waterfall in A Lost World.
yes.
That way. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but like the visual effects achievement by this team on the entire Vermithor sequence is top level cinematic, in my opinion. It
Mhm.
looked good. It felt real. It felt like the dragon was actually there. The compositing was fantastic. It's just such an achievement.
Well, and I'll go back to the camera angles. There were some sequences where it looked like practical effects, and then there were some sequences where it looked like CGI. And I'm going to have to watch the behind the scenes to see just how much practical they use. Probably very little, but I think that's telling that even if you are using CGI more often than not, that you're still able to have actors that can convey as if they're looking right at a dragon's head, that you're still able to create something that looks like the T-Rex of 1993. Like it's a masterpiece of being able to look from a frightened person's perspective up at this behemoth, or being able to go over the shoulder of a dragon looking out at a peninsula of potential, people to eat. The different shot selection that they had for this scene was various enough to put yourself in the shoes of various characters, from Rhaenyra to Hugh to Vermithor. Yes, I'm going to say Vermithor is a character. Like to see the outcome of this from so many different points of view was really well done.
Was too, like the duration of it was so much. I thought that it was like, because they've mentioned before how expensive it is to show the dragons, like even for 10 seconds. Every time that I thought it was over, it just kept going, and I'm just like, oh my god, like there's more?
Well, not only was there more Vermithor, but there was also a separate scene entirely with Silverwing when Ulf escapes. Okay, settle this for me, because I'm virtually certain I know what happened. Did he step in a clutch of eggs?
Yeah, he stepped in the clutch.
That's what I thought.
It literally, he stepped in, and I'm just like, that's a clutch. Like there is at least in there, if not more. Like,
right.
So whose eggs are those?
And then it felt very much like Shrek, where you see something that looks like it could be part of the mountain wall,
He's
and then the eye pops open, and you're just like, oh shit, that's actually a dragon. Yeah. Ulf may be the
dragon.
He may be the donkey of this franchise.
Need to meme that shit too.
Yeah, we need to get on that, and then have him like Ulf is falling over and running away or whatever, and he's like, Shrek!
And like just pure dumb luck on his half, right? Like trying to run away, and then he just happens to stumble upon the dragon that he's going to bond with. He destroyed her fucking clutch in the process.
Well, yeah, and rather than eating him, she just kind of like nudges him, like, you clumsy oaf, get out of the way of here. Like quit getting in the way. Like, just kind of bumps him a couple of times with her snout, and that was it.
It was like, he's going to be clumsy anyway, so she's like, yeah, I already expected this. You're
yeah, okay, yeah, that was pretty crazy. And then seeing him riding Silverwing at the very end, it's like, okay, there must have been another little bit of a time jump to be able to get mounts on these previously wild dragons and get them accustomed to potentially having a rider.
If you will go back and watch it, Silverwing has the harness on her still.
From her previous rider?
She already has a harness on her.
I did not catch that.
Sea Smoke.
Yeah, she did.
But I mean, Sea Smoke they were also trying to get the knife on it.
Do we know, have they mentioned who Silverwing's previous rider was? For those that are big fans of the books, we know some spoilers. We don't know them all. I'd like to keep it that way. But we're very much TV viewers too, so we're learning on a lot of this and along for the ride. So forgive our ignorance at times.
According to a quick Google search, it was actually Jaehaerys's wife, Queen Alysanne.
So that's kind of a neat connection because Vermithor was his dragon.
Right. And so it's implied that clutch that we were just mentioning belongs to Vermithor and Silverwing because they were mated just the way their riders were mated.
Oh, I love that.
So,
they've just been hanging out there together. That's cool.
Oh,
yeah.
I like that.
Their old lives together. Love that. Okay. I think that the last scene in this show, like the last shot, is something that needs attention. However, are we going to talk about how Alicent just off to the Kingswood? See you later. Went camping. Just needed to escape, and then goes into the lake and looks like she's going to just end it there, and then she's just like, yeah, never mind, I'm just going for a swim.
So from what I understand, Alicent's role in the books at this point in time becomes next to nothing. She becomes a character who's barely involved. So my theory is she's gonna end up at Dragonstone at some point in time.
Yep.
And I know book lovers are gonna fucking hate it, but I absolutely feel like that's where maybe she doesn't get there, but I feel like that's where the intent is.
No, I agree. She's been on this existential trip since she got removed from the small council, where she doesn't know who she is or what her purpose is or how she can contribute. And after that conversation with Rhaenyra, where she realizes that it's not even the right Aegon that's sitting on the throne, she realized just how much of her adult life she just royally fucked up, literally royally fucked it up. And I don't think she wants to be around that fuckery anymore. Even if her dad comes back, I don't think it's going to be enough to keep her. I think she is gone. And unless she goes back to Old Town, then she's headed to Dragonstone. Those are the only two places I see her going.
Well, you brought it up, so I'm going to mention it. Did you see the preview of the next episode?
Yes, I did.
So I think Otto is coming back.
Otto comes back, and she does make it back to King's Landing because she has a conversation there, but I still don't think she's going to stay there. Just because she goes back doesn't mean she stays back.
Agreed. But interestingly enough, despite what Ryan Condal said, it seems like there's some fibbing going on because in the preview it shows, I forget what Daeron's dragon's name, but they showed Daeron's dragon with the Hightower army in the preview for the next episode. So it's like, I guess you might not, because they said Daeron's not going to be in this season. So I guess theoretically, maybe it's one of the final shots next week of them arriving. But they absolutely showed that dragon in the preview. I've already seen it circulating on Twitter.
Are you sure that it's not Helena's dragon?
From what I understand, it's not.
Well, because he does recruit Dreamfire. Aemon has that conversation with Helena in that preview, saying that he needs her to ride into battle on Dreamfire, and she just doesn't strike me as a warrior in any sense of the word. So her going into battle sounds like a really bad idea.
Agreed.
It just, that is a recipe for disaster. Sending her into a hostile situation, having to make, in the moment decisions like that after all that she's been through, and just by her very nature, none of that sounds like it's going to be a good idea. But their backs are against the wall because aside from Vhagar and Dreamfire, they've got Tessarion apparently coming in from Old Town. And then who else? I don't think Sunfire is in any condition to fight. So
I thought
It's
they killed
basically
Sunfire.
who?
I thought they killed Sunfire.
It was growling and breathing at the end of that battle. So
Yeah, but
unless
that like he's on his way out.
He's still alive, but basically useless. So,
at this
do we know
at
if
this
Dreamfire's blue? Zach, do you have that information handy?
Dreamfire might be. Let me see.
Because
I'm the only one
Tessarion or
that's on
whatever
my
is supposed to be
computer
blue.
right now. So Dreamfire is kind of a bluish silver.
Might be Dreamfire then, but people seem to think it's Tessarion. We'll see. But still, you're right. Like, if Daemon sides with Rhaenyra, which I do believe is coming, that's what, like 6-on-3?
Well, Tessarion is also a blue. Tessarion is known as the Blue Queen. So both Dreamfire and Tessarion are blue dragons. Blue, silver. But let's just hypothetically say we've got Vhagar, we've got Dreamfire, and we've got Tessarion. Meanwhile, we've got at the very least Sea Smoke, Vermithor, and then Silverwing. Those are the three that just got recruited. You've got Jace's dragon. You've got Rhaenyra's dragon. That's 5. Rhaena is possibly recruiting Sheepstealer, and then you've got Caraxes, who's kind of a wild card. So that's 7.
Baela's dragon. So 8.
Yeah,
8-on-3.
Yeah, Baela's got a dragon as well. Almost forgot Baela's dragon. So that's 8 dragons for Team Black right now. So if we're talking about who won the episode, I think it's a landslide. Team Black won this episode, both in screen time and in development. And it's setting things up for a pretty big season finale, one way or another.
Man, 8-on-3. Something's got to give there.
I mean, I don't care how big Vhagar is. 8-on-3. And honestly, I'm not counting on Dreamfire to do much because of who her rider is. So, like, it's basically going to be 7 or 8-on-2 if they all assemble at the same point at the same time. Is there any contention on this small council about Team Black winning versus Team Green? I think it's far and away. You think Team Green won?
I don't think Team Green necessarily won, but I don't think that it was as big of a landslide as you're making it out to be. Like, yes, they have more dragons and dragon riders. However, like I said, when word gets back to the small folk in King's Landing that she just sacrificed all these people and wouldn't allow them to leave and everything, there's going to be repercussions.
Who's going to tell, though?
They're going to be like, hey, where's my cousin? Where's this person who worked at the bar? Why isn't this person coming back?
Yeah, but
who's going to tell? My point still stands. There's no snitches. Miss Arya's in charge of whispers in Flea Bottom. She gonna control the narrative. That's the way politics works.
Just like what's his face? The other member of the small council on Team Green said, "Well, I heard it from my cousin, who heard it from this person, who heard it from that person, who heard it from this person."
Oh God!
People talk.
That scene just had me.
That had my eyes rolling.
Yeah.
For once, Laris made the right call. He made the right decision to not spread that rumor.
Because if this is again where we are disagreeing, he should have taken that information and said it to him anyway.
No.
Even if he was wrong, any news about dragons should be brought to the attention immediately. This is a war with dragons. If they have another rider, it should be brought to the attention immediately, even if it's a rumor, because look at what happened. They didn't address it. They were able to get people out of the city, and they were able to get more dragon riders.
You can't look at it in hindsight. You know, they're not fortune tellers.
I know you're not fortune tellers, but it's Zach is already twiddling stuff. He's so done with me. I know that it's not fortune tellers or anything, but it's still like War 101. Be fucking cautious.
No, sorry.
No, castle politics are superseding war counseling.
I'm going to die in the war, and I'm going to be the
Castle-
only one alive because I'm the only one that can be put.
Larys is already in bad standing with Aemond. He's about to get his ass demoted, and that's why in the last episode he was conniving with Aegon, because he's worried about getting exiled already. If he brings a rumor that's from 5 people away from whoever whispered it in his ear, and he tells the king that that's what his source is, it's like, this fisherman's cousin's best friend told me so and so. That shit is going to get him knocked out of the council and taken out of power. He already doesn't have Harrenhal. If he gets kicked out of King's Landing, he has no fucking place to go.
He doesn't deserve a place to go. He's like this fucking bad person.
That's not the point, though.
In his shoes, his perspective is that is not a whisper that I bring to the Prince Regent, because if I do, my ass is grass.
I agree. And I told Jade that when the episode was going on. I was like, it's like saying my aunt's cousin's uncle's sister's hamster's mailman told me this.
Brothers,
even
nephews,
now,
cousins, former roommate.
Even now, after the fact, it's like Larys gets to be the one to go sit here and go, oh, well, he should have told you. He was the one that knew, right? So
finds out that Larys knew the entire time. It's going to be like, well, why didn't you friggin' say anything?
It could play out that way, but I don't think it will.
It probably won't.
Larys is another one of those people that knows how to manipulate the narrative, and he'll be able to say, like, it won't matter what we were told before. What matters now is that we need to figure out how to defeat these dragons. Like, he's gonna like find a way to transition out of past conversations and like lean into how he's valuable for the future fight that's still yet to come. Like, he's gonna find a way to make himself valuable. He has that knack, I feel like.
How did you guys feel about the final scene? Obviously, with Vhagar having to retreat, and unlike the finale of last season, this time he actually listens and does. Sorry. How do we feel? Just how that scene came off?
We're probably going to be on opposite ends. That's the way it's gone all night. One of us apparently hated it. I don't know which one yet.
Why don't you go first?
I think Sean's recollection is spot on. I think him being able to tell Vhagar no in this season shows the development of their rapport that has evolved since the end of season 1. And he's able to actually tell the biggest dragon in the fucking world to turn around and flee and go home. And I think that's a big deal, because there have been a couple of times, both at the Battle of Rook's Rest and in the season 1 finale, where Vhagar just kind of ignores him. And so I think for him to be able to have that influence is pretty telling. And it shows the development of their relationship, and also what kind of things could still be to come when the two of them are in combat. They seem to be in more sync now. So when they do go into a fight, I feel like Vhagar is going to be listening to Aemond a little bit better, and that could prove deadly to some of the smaller dragons when they actually get into the actual dance.
Jade, how do you feel about the scene?
I really liked it. So yay, we're agreeing on something.
Yay! We ended on a high note, and we get the fireworks. Yay! Fantastic.
I was doing it for her, not for me.
Oh, well.
I really liked it. Stop. You made me lose my train of thought. You know that I have a bad memory. I even said to Sean, like, while we were watching it, I'm just like, all the dragons, like the 3 of them sitting together on top of Dragonstone, I'm just like, it brought me back to like Game of Thrones, and I'm just like, it reminds me of Dany's dragons. Like, it was such a good callback. And then when they're like standing there, like screeching up at that old granny bitch, I fucking hate her. When they were screaming up at her, it's almost like they're just like, fight me. Like, I'm ready for my revenge now. We have our backup.
It's like, yeah, you better run, bitch.
Yeah. And I'm just like, oh, there's a storm of brewing.
Mm-hmm. And here's the interesting thing. Historically, it's been the penultimate in Game of Thrones that has had some of the biggest dealings. And then the finale just provides us some of the aftermath. You look at like Blackwater is my favorite example. You know, you have the huge Battle of Blackwater Bay in the 9th episode of season 2, and then you see Tywin get named Hand of the King, and you see what King's Landing looks like after the battle. You see what happens to Tyrion afterwards. All that sort of stuff is what happens in the season 2 finale. We didn't have the big sequence here. We had more depth, more development, more recruiting, all that sort of stuff. So based on how big of a finale we had with the sky fight in the season 1 finale, you know, the beginning of the dance, if you will, is this season 2 finale where we actually is this where we actually see a dance of dragons, where we get like an actual legitimate dragon fight that leaves us wondering what the aftermath is going to look like for the beginning of season 3?
I don't know, because I don't know if I agree with that because of how expensive and how long the Vermithor scene was. I think that's a pretty big sequence for them. It's like something out of a horror movie. I don't know how many people get killed. I'd have to rewatch it again. It's like, I hope that that's not like the final big hurrah of the season. And yet, if it ends up being that, it's kind of like, well, yeah, you probably spent an ass load on that 5-minute sequence that just kept going and going and going. And not that it wasn't good. I loved it, but I hope that
did.
we're getting some kind of battle next week. We see the ships finally set
Oh,
sail,
the
and
ships. Oh,
and
the
like
ships.
so there's that. We see a bunch of dragons. Cole, who was not in this episode, is shown in the next one.
Thank God he was
Yeah, it was nice to
That
have
makes
1
this
week break.
episode a 10 out of 10 right there because it had no Kristen fucking Cole.
Same with Alice. She wasn't in this episode either.
Who?
Alice.
Oh,
Alice
right.
Rivers.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I don't know how it's going to play out next week. I would think that there's going to be some kind of battle, but if there isn't, and it's just a bunch of teases, I do think you'll be able to point back at this episode and go, well, the Vermithor sequence was one of the bigger, more daring dragon sequences we've ever gotten, really. It's just in a cave, right?
Right.
I will say this. You guys have both pointed out that there are 3 dragons on Dragonstone at the end, which is similar to Dany. I would also say that Rhaenyra is starting to show some signs to similar to Dany at the end, which I'm not liking. Not saying it's not earned. But you'll notice someone's dragon wasn't there with them at the end. And Zach kind of alluded to it earlier. And that's Jacaerys. Jacaerys wasn't there and waiting to defend or anything.
Neither Jace nor Bela.
I have a hunch Jacaerys, maybe even Bela too, might be off to meet a certain someone in Harrenhal.
Oh, maybe they got dispatched. Okay. That's
No, I'm thinking they just go.
See, I don't think so. I think that it was just the fact of like those are the 2 dragons that just got claimed. So those are the ones that are going to be prominent and featured there. And then of course Rhaenyra's is going to be featured because it's going to be like she's standing right there. She has to be. It just makes sense.
It would have been cool though if maybe a couple of them were circling or something, like having a patrol or a perimeter or something. I think showing something and the absence of something are both pieces of storytelling that Game of Thrones utilizes intentionally. So I think not having them could be something, but if it's not, I'm not going to be like upset by it, you know? Like, I'm not going to be like, oh, well, this little nitpick that made it awful for me. Yeah, like, it's just going to be one of those things that's like, oh, okay, that's where they were. We'll find out. We'll find out next week.
Yeah, I think Jacaerys is at a point where he thinks Daemon will side with him more than his mom will, and he's already invoked Daemon's name once without anybody's permission. So I have a feeling he's going to end up at Harrenhal even without his mom sending him.
It's entirely
That's my
possible.
prediction. So
It's entirely possible. Well,
go
who was our episode MVP tonight? Who wins this episode?
Am I not allowed to talk about next week because you're afraid I'm going to disagree with you again?
Oh my God.
Next week. When were we talking about next week? We were talking about the final season.
About her.
You just you already denied that you didn't think Jacaerys would go.
Whatever.
The floor is yours if you want it. I'm not trying to upset anybody.
Oh, I'm kidding, Zach.
Like,
Zach, it's all good.
Well, Team Black wins, not even just from a strategic.
I was going to say, I think that there's going to be a battle next week, but I don't think it's going to be the big battle that we think it's going to be because of the big Vermithor sequence to this episode. Although we were promised 2 big dragon fights, have we gotten that?
Not to my knowledge.
We weren't promised 2 big dragon fights. We were promised 2 big battle sequences. That doesn't necessarily mean it has to involve dragons.
Okay, then I misunderstood that one.
It could just be armies on armies, and that doesn't cost nearly as much in CGI as it does just paying extras to fall over dead from fake arrows. So we could get, an army marching from Old Town and an army marching from Harrenhal, and they meet, at the Reach or something like that. So there's still the possibility of having that, and then maybe a dragon swooping in at the end, but it doesn't have to be huge pyro or anything like that. It'll just be the thing that stems the momentum in a certain direction, and one army flees into the woods while the other one cheers as the dragon chases them off or something like that. So, there's a ton of potential with this type of fight choreography, and nothing is set in stone. So looking forward to how next week plays out. I say Team Black wins. Sean says Team Black wins this episode. Jade, what do you say?
Team Black.
Team Black. And an episode MVP. I'm gonna say Hugh. I'm gonna say Hugh won this episode, even in spite of the tough conversation we had. He had the best development out of everybody, and he's got possibly the most badass dragon in Westeros. I think Vermithor is just a more intimidating dragon and a more fun dragon to watch than Granny Three Necks. So I'm going with Hugh having the best episode this week.
This is a tough one. I've been thinking about this for a while. Hugh came up definitely. I'm going to reluctantly say Rhaenyra because I feel like there's the beginning of a turn happening. But if it ends up not being a turn, then I'm going to regret picking her. But I'm going to go with Rhaenyra, but Hugh would be a close runner-up. What about you, Jade?
I'm going to go with somebody that we did not actually talk about this episode. We glossed over this part altogether. I want to talk about our little Lord Tully. I think he had the best performance this week. He was bold as fuck and so brazen with Daemon. And called him out numerous times, was just like, what are you going to do? Do you want my army or not? He was, I think that he deserves the MVP of the week.
If he had more screen time, I would agree with you for sure. He made the most of the screen time he had, though. He definitely did. Didn't know the red sewing was the name of the episode. It just said episode 7 when I hit play on it.
Neither did I. I seen something else out there, but
I would say he probably had the same amount of screen time as Hugh after everything's said and done.
I don't know about that, but the actor, whoever he is, he's got to be young. Honestly, I forgot all about it because it happened so early on in the episode, but he was really, really good. He doesn't seem really good at the beginning of his part. And then when he flips that switch on Daemon, it's just like, he could have flipped the switch and been completely unconvincing. But he's very convincing and it comes across very well.
Yeah. Yeah. He's the only one in all of Harrenhal that has like been able to match Daemon's energy, match his charisma. And that's not a knock on Lord Strong for what he's tried to do to keep Harrenhal together. Like he just doesn't want to get eaten. He doesn't want to die. And so I can understand that. But Lord Tully knows that Daemon needs him. And so when he says, "Mind your tongue, boy," he's like, no. You did not just talk to the guy like that who you need his army from. Like, you did not just say that. You did not just do that." And he challenges Daemon and says, like, you need to prove yourself. And he does, and basically creates a scapegoat that appeases the lords and gives him the army he's been looking for like what, 3 or 4 episodes now, maybe 5. So Daemon finally gets his way, even though it probably doesn't go the way he thought it would. But yeah, that's a great pick. And it was a great episode and a great discussion. I love when they get lively because it means everybody's passionate about it in different ways and for different reasons. So appreciate you guys. Love you guys. Thanks so much for doing this with me. Y'all let us know in the comments what you thought of the episode. George, aka Chosen Nightwolf, gives it a 9 out of 10. I'm probably in a very similar boat. And so go follow us on all our different socials at House of the Empire, Legacy Westeros. And go follow Zach Arnold Productions, who helps with some of the behind the scenes stuff that goes on here on this particular channel as well. We're slowly expanding into helping different channels and groups create energetic media solutions for their pages. And that's one of the things that we've been doing here on the Legacy of Westeros as well. So be sure to follow all those socials and be sure to hit that subscribe button so that you can see the discussions for next week's season finale. We've been building up to this for a really long time now, and we are just a few short days away from a really big payoff. But I think that is going to do it for this edition of a live discussion and a lively discussion of House of the Dragon episode 7. For Jade and for Sean, I'm Zach, thanking you for tuning in this week. We'll see you all next week when the Empire returns.
Do you know what legacy means?
It's what you pass down to your children and your children's children. It's what remains of you when you're gone.
Sorry, Zach, 1 second. She's Team Black. Although we're starting to question that, aren't we? Yeah. Yeah, we are. Just give me a second, dude. I'll be back in like 2 minutes if you can hold that long.
Something wrong?
Baby in his hand.
Her.
No, we just don't usually talk much after the show's wrapped. We're still live, aren't we?
Oh, like I can message. No, we're not live. We're
it's the ticker on my screen says live still.
Oh, well, hello, people. I don't know why I didn't end. This is Bobo, and she's Team Black for now. Karen is 43. I don't know what that means, George.
That's what plays on.
Let's try this again. Apologies, everybody. I don't know why it didn't end. I clicked it. That happened. With
Yeah,
Ryan
my
and I
wife
recording
just
earlier.
wrote and said, "You guys are still live," and I'm like, "Oh no."
Well, good night, everybody. Bobo with the cameo.
Do you know what legacy means?
It's what you pass down to your children and your children's children. It's what remains of you when you're gone.